The crystal chandeliers shimmered above him like a sky full of stars he didn't belong under. Every table in the grand ballroom of the Kensington Hotel in downtown Chicago glittered with polished silverware and folded linen napkins shaped like crowns. Men in tailored suits checked designer watches. Women in elegant gowns laughed softly behind champagne glasses. And in the middle of it all sat a man who had ironed his only button-down shirt 3 times just to hide how old it was. His name was Michael Carter, a poor single father who had almost turned around 3 times before stepping into that room. His shoes were scuffed. His palms were calloused from working construction shifts that began before sunrise. He didn't belong at a luxury charity gala designed for the city's elite. But he didn't know that yet. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of destiny to rewrite someone's story, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that miracles sometimes wear work boots instead of tuxedos. Michael wasn't there for romance. He wasn't even there for himself. He had come because a community center had handed him a ticket meant for a silent auction and fundraising dinner hosted by one of the most powerful businesswomen in America, Olivia Bennett, the billionaire CEO of Bennett Technologies. The invitation had been part of a local outreach initiative, offering a seat at the table for everyday heroes. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man constantly one bill away from losing everything. 3 years earlier, Michael's wife Sarah had passed away after a sudden illness. In a matter of weeks, hospital bills drained their savings, and grief hollowed out his world. He was left alone with his 6-year-old daughter Ava, and a house that suddenly felt too quiet. He worked double shifts. He learned to braid hair by watching online tutorials. He attended every school recital even if he showed up covered in drywall dust. He skipped meals so Ava could have fresh fruit in her lunchbox. He never complained, but that night, sitting at table 17, he wondered if he had made a mistake coming. Across the room, cameras flashed as Olivia Bennett entered. She was tall, composed, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had built an empire from nothing. At 38, she was already featured on the cover of Forbes and called the Iron Visionary of Silicon Valley. Her company had recently relocated part of its operations to Chicago, and tonight's event was meant to celebrate expansion and community partnerships. Olivia scanned the room as she greeted donors. Her smile was practiced but not fake. She believed in philanthropy. She believed in lifting others up. Then her eyes stopped, at table 17, at a man who looked painfully out of place. For a second she thought it was a trick of memory, a ghost. But when he lowered his head slightly, rubbing the back of his neck the way he used to when he felt uncomfortable, her breath caught in her throat. Michael Carter. The same Michael who, 15 years earlier, had shared a cracked dorm mattress with her in a tiny apartment in Boston when they were both broke college students with impossible dreams. Back then, Olivia had been just Olivia Bennett, an ambitious computer science major with big ideas and no funding. Michael had been studying architecture, working night shifts at a diner to help his mother pay rent. They had fallen in love over cheap coffee and late-night study sessions. He had been her safe place when investors laughed at her first startup pitch. He had been the one who told her she was brilliant before the world agreed. But life had torn them apart. When Olivia received an opportunity to move west and chase venture capital funding, she had begged Michael to come with her. He couldn't. His mother was sick. He couldn't leave. Promises turned into distance. Distance turned into silence. And now he was sitting 10 feet away from her in a room filled with billionaires. Olivia excused herself from a conversation and walked toward table 17. Every step felt heavier than the last. Michael looked up when her shadow fell across him. The moment their eyes met, time didn't just slow, it fractured. He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his water glass, his face drained of color. She had changed. Of course she had. She wore success like a second skin, but her eyes were the same, sharp, searching, full of emotion she tried to hide. He felt exposed in his wrinkled shirt, painfully aware of the difference between their worlds. What he didn't know was that Olivia felt just as small in that moment, because she remembered who he had been when she had nothing. The gala continued around them, but their reunion was a silent storm. They moved to a quieter corner near the terrace overlooking the Chicago skyline. The city lights flickered below like distant memories. Michael learned that Olivia had built a global technology empire valued in the billions. Olivia learned that Michael had buried his wife, raised his daughter alone, and nearly lost his home twice due to medical debt. He didn't ask her for anything. Not sympathy, not money, not opportunity. He told her about Ava instead, how she loved drawing skyscrapers and said she wanted to design buildings that touched the clouds. His eyes softened when he spoke about his daughter. Pride replaced embarrassment. Olivia felt something crack open inside her. The world saw Michael as a poor construction worker who had sat at the wrong table. But she saw the man who once sold his only guitar to help her pay for a programming course she couldn't afford. She saw the man who believed in her before investors did. Later that evening, Olivia took the stage to deliver her keynote speech. The crowd quieted, expecting polished corporate gratitude. Instead, her voice trembled. She spoke about resilience, about the people who shape us long before success arrives. She told a story, not naming him, but describing a young man who had once told her, "Your ideas will change the world. You just have to survive long enough to prove it." Then she surprised everyone. She announced a new initiative, the Carter Foundation for Single Parents in Skilled Trades, a multi-million-dollar program providing scholarships, childcare support, and debt relief for single mothers and fathers working blue-collar jobs. The room erupted in applause. Michael sat frozen. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't expected anything. After the speech, Olivia walked straight to him again. This time, cameras followed. She thanked him publicly, not as a billionaire thanking a charity guest, but as a woman thanking the man who once carried her dream when it was too heavy for her alone. Michael felt tears he hadn't allowed himself in years. In the weeks that followed, his life didn't transform overnight into a fairy tale. He still woke up at 5 a.m. He still packed Ava's lunch. But opportunities began to open. Olivia's company offered him a position overseeing community construction projects tied to Bennett Technologies' new developments. It wasn't charity, it was recognition of his talent and years of experience. More importantly, Ava received a full educational grant through the foundation. Her drawings of skyscrapers were soon pinned on the office wall of an architectural firm partnered with the program. One evening, months later, Michael stood on the same hotel terrace. This time invited as an honored guest at another event. Ava held his hand, wearing a simple blue dress and smiling up at the skyline. Olivia joined them, not as a distant CEO, but as someone rediscovering a connection that time had buried but never erased. Life hadn't brought them back together through wealth or status. It had brought them back through humility, through shared history, through love that had matured into something deeper than youthful romance. As the wind brushed across the Chicago River below, Michael realized something powerful. He had never truly sat at the wrong table. He had simply been sitting at the table, meant to remind the world that success is not measured by bank accounts, but by the sacrifices no one sees. And Olivia had never forgotten who helped her survive before she thrived. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness echoes across years and second chances are real, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. And before we end, I have a special request. Comment the word believe if you think no act of goodness is ever wasted. Because somewhere out there, someone you once helped might be building a future that will one day come back to lift you higher than you ever imagined. Stories like Michael and Olivia's remind us that destiny doesn't always shout. Sometimes it quietly waits for the right moment to bring two lives back together. And sometimes all it takes is sitting at the wrong table to finally find where you truly belong.